What I want to talk to you today is about the fact that as a human being, we crave and thrive on two really important things. One of them is expansion, and the other is safety. Expansion means the ability to be curious, to try new things, to think of the world differently, to read, to travel, to explore, to ask questions, to create a different career path or go deeper in the one we're in. It means to be fully feeling the energy and the power of who we could be, who we were meant to be, whatever that might be. And that expansion could be in the form of what we do in the world or how we are in the world. So the doing could be in our career, it could be in our art that we make, it could be in being a musician, it could be in how we parent. And it could just as strongly be in who we are. Are we that loving and wise and kind person in our family system? Are we that person that people come to just hang out in our house because they feel safe with us? Are we that person who isn't afraid of anything and tries the new things and inspires others to do that? Are we that person who feels a deep desire to be generous in all ways? And so you become the example of generosity. The being and the doing, or the both of those, is our expansion. Some of these things I've mentioned have felt maybe to you, well, that doesn't feel like that's a thing, right? Like, okay, I'm being peaceful, like who cares? No, the idea here is that we embody various constellations of skills, of passions, and of qualities. When I say qualities, I mean generosity, compassion, empathy, enthusiasm, discernment, intelligence, logic, intuition, any of those things, right? We are each individual constellations of a mixture of things that make us who we are. And we are to expand into being those things. So maybe we've always been that generous person, hopefully not to the fault of it self-sacrificial, but just always being that person who's like, what can I do? And how does this work? And I've got this idea, and I've got a couple minutes of time. I want to listen to what's bothering you today. But maybe you've been told your whole life that you're being too generous. Maybe you've been told your whole life that you're playing the fool, right? We have all these stories that are told to us about when we are too much of anything. What if we just expand into being all of what we are? Eventually, what I found in my own life is that sometimes that means like I go pretty deep on one thing for a while until I find my happy medium, but that's okay. Just play with that. So this is the expansion. This is what I mean by expansion. And expansion is what our soul desires and what it requires. I don't know if anyone else here has had the experience of living portions of your life like I have, where I squelched everything my soul wanted because it wasn't safe. So it was sitting just doing all the things it had to do, but there wasn't enough fire. There wasn't that feeling, that energy. We need to feed that fire. We need to feed that center, the who we are. So I started by talking about we need expansion, right? Being more out there. And out there could be also, being quiet. You don't have to be all big and bold, but being you in all the ways that you can be, in all the spaces. And that's a process over time. The other thing that we require, and is really important that we don't bypass, is we do require safety. So safety has to do with fundamentally the basic needs, right? Housing, shelter, community, inner sense of who we are. But we also need to have a sense of trust and safety in ourself, for ourself. Just like we have to feed our expansion, give ourselves the things that really light us up, really make us excited. We also need to tend to the times and spaces where we need to feel safe, where we need to feel like we're listening to our fears or our concerns, or the intuition that says this person, this thing isn't healthy, isn't good. There's a lot of stuff, self-help books, sales techniques, anything you can think of. There's so many different things out there that say, do it even if you're scared. I believe in that about 10%. But if we do everything pushing past ourselves, ourself is going to put on that brakes stronger and stronger and stronger each time. Instead, what we need to do is balance. Okay, we would love to do this exciting thing, go on this fabulous, adventurous trip, right? Always wanted to see whatever it might be, right? And then there's a piece of us that says, that makes me scared. What if X? What if this? I don't know enough about this. How do I make this happen? Right? We could still do that trip, but we might never leave our hotel room. What's better is that we say, got it, I hear the fears. What research do we need to do to make us feel better? What planning ahead do we need to do to make us understand this? Who do we need to talk to who's been on that trip before to help us in this process? How do we do this? And how, and this is super important, how does the expansive part of us not make wrong or shame the afraid part of us, right? In our society, we've been told that being afraid is like one of the worst things you can do, right? Like, don't be afraid, don't cry, don't do this thing, just try this thing. It's okay, the food's not, I know you never like this one type of food, but try it anyways. We push so hard. Why are we not listening to ourselves? Why? Well, because we weren't listened to. Time to break that cycle. Time to listen to our own fears, to hear them, to say, what would make you feel better? What is it here? Is it planning, or is it healing from a trip you took before and that was pretty scary, right? Letting yourself actually feel those emotions and not shame yourself, because even in that last trip, you shamed yourself. God dang it, spent all this money, and then we didn't let ourselves do this thing. We really wanted to hike that mountain, but at the last minute, we chickened out, and now we're mad at ourselves, right? So now, of course, that part of us is like, well, I don't want to go on a trip again. You're going to beat me up. Expansion and safety in everything. So that's an example of a trip, right? But what about an expansion of a decision? What about example, not expansion. What about an example of a decision, right? What if we are trying to decide on a job, right? And there's a job that feels really exciting and it would be a growth for us. But then there's this part of us that says, I don't know if we're going to make it. I don't know if we're, I have imposter syndrome. I'm worried about it. We could, as many of us have done, well, it's the next step. It's the manager role. I need to get into that role, and I'm sure I'll fake it till I make it. But I haven't listened to the fear that goes, yeah, but I'm not ready for this. Just sit with it. Listen to it for the first time without trying to change it. Let it be heard, and then have a conversation between your expansive part and your safe part by saying, I'm hearing you need that safety, and we're going to make sure you're safe all the way along. We're not going to make sudden moves. I'm not going to take on this job until you feel a little bit more safe. However, the expansive part, which is our soul, is the part that's in charge. It's still important that we do expand into the world, but we do it with both parts and giving ourselves both expansion and safety. So what if the new job you've applied for, you've been told that you should take, or whatever it is, requires certain skills you don't have, right? And so this part is going, I don't really know, I can't really do this. Give yourself the training. Figure out a way to learn it. Ask someone to teach you. Everything's on YouTube. Find some YouTube videos to walk you through whatever those skills are that you don't feel like you have right now, to give you more confidence to do that thing that allows your soul to grow and expand and progress, but not ever at the expense of the scared and safety requiring part of us. Both need to be there. I have found in my own life when I have ignored this part, the part that needs to be safe, she's sabotaging it. I've seen it over and over. So instead of there being this internal dialogue and fight between myself, which I had for most of my life, I decided, why not try something different? What if we just sat down and talked? And so myself and my clients have done this numerous times. I can't tell you how many of my journals are filled with these conversations between the two parts of me. You might have seen in my other videos, I refer to the part that needs safety as our shadow self, which is our ego, our inner child, the wounded part, the part that needs loving and healing. And the part that wants expansion is our noble self, our soul, our intuition, our connection to the divine. And I have pages and pages of journal entries where my shadow self is sharing, I'm afraid of this and I don't really know and this really freaks me out, etc. And my noble self responding, saying, we hear you. Tell me more about what that is. What's happening for you? Well, it's this and I don't really like this and this person that we're supposed to go on this trip with, okay, well, tell me more. Never trying to fix, but tell me more. And the conversation keeps going until the shadow has said everything it needs to, that we've never listened to before. We're not judging it. We're not trying to fix it. We're not trying to come to a solve so that we can do the thing we really want to do. We listen to it all the way to the end. And then the noble says, what do you need from me to feel safe in this environment? And it's going to have ideas. It's going to be able to tell you because it knows what it is. Well, could you ask me before we pick up the phone when I'm not ready to talk to that particular person? Can you check in with me? Can you give me a heads up? Can we get that training, like I mentioned, if it's for a job? Can we do X, Y, and Z? And the noble says, oh my God, I love you so much. I absolutely want to give you everything you need. Absolutely. And if this takes us a little bit of time to get you to a point where you feel safe, not where you're convinced to do my way, but where you feel safe and you're ready to make this happen, then we know that we can move together. That inner trust is really, really important. So I hope that this was useful and helpful to you today. I hope that it's given some thoughts. I will be sharing more about some of my process between my noble self and my shadow self. There's lots of videos about who they are and how they were formed and what they're about. And I will be talking a lot about how to practically work with them and practically move forward in life. Much love to everyone.